Kideaters vs. Zoo BoyZ, Chapter 13, Part A. With the new agreement met, approved by the top banana himself, the air crew came in overhead and dropped their retrieval basket down while the kids helped their major load them. The crew of men never set foot on the ground. The tail gunner kept a close eye out for any approaching attacks. What they failed to realize that was with the sound of their flying machine, it forced everything to stay well hidden. After that load was swept away, the boys led Major Hightower to an empty pool where they first discovered the large gang of tiny tigers, Tina's family. Quasi followed just behind them. The pool was empty, with the exception of leaves and debris, and they told Major all the details of the tiger chase last time, and she hoped this time they could collect as many as possible, not just one. It was getting very dark, very fast, so she made the decision to call it a night. Ronnie gave a word of caution. "We ran into a building near here. Maybe we can camp inside there or inside one of the nearby buildings and try the tiger pool idea first thing in the morning, like when it's brighter." Dave made fun of Ronnie, but also had a valid point. "Try it already, pup. Remember, the sea lion? Yeah, she sleeps in one of those gift shops." She replied, "Well, let's not stay in that building." They all laughed, and Jeremy recommended they go back to the aviary. His friends agreed because they knew there was an empty cage there that offered more security than anywhere else on the whole island that they knew of. Just then, John spoke up. His voice sounded like he was trapped in a small speaker. "Hey guys, how about this?" They looked in the direction of where his voice was coming from. He joked with them, saying, "Oh no, help, I'm stuck in a clear box." He found a 10 by 10 clear container. From inside, he was doing the old clown mime routine. He leaned his head back out of the box, breaking up his mime act. "It's actually a see-through box. Ha ha!" He was let down by their underwhelming reaction. They weren't entertained. They were too tired to play anymore. Major was busy pulling out a map. She turned on a headlamp they hadn't even noticed that she put on. Then she offered an even more secure place. "Not far from here are large cages and crates dropped for us to put larger animals in. We can travel there in these underground tunnels, stick together, and come out here." She pointed to the location on a map. "There we'll find not only a safe cage, but a cage that is also surrounded by wooden crates, giving us even more insulation, more barriers between us and, well, whatever." They liked that idea even better. As they entered a nearby manhole, they told her about the hellhounds that tried to get them in the cage they stayed in while hiding in the aviary last trip, and how Robinson Crusoe shot the hellhounds. That nicely led into a conversation about Crusoe and details they could recall that might help them relocate him. There was so much secrecy and camouflage involved. They were sure they weren't sure if they would ever be able to catch him. Major encouraged them. Look what we caught so far. We'll get him, boys." Finally, they came to an exit above them, making it safe to the cages and crates she told them about. They were so exhausted. So, other than getting over the fact that they were having a sleepover with a full-figured female, they fell asleep fast. The boys dreamed of being able to go home, even if they had to come back in a few days later or whatever. They hoped they could return by boat next time so they could leave when they wanted, not have to wait for a helicopter. In addition to that, they knew that the noise of an aircraft chopping the air was the opposite of being stealthy. The ability to capture any living thing with loud vehicles around greatly lowered the probability of finding anything, let alone catching them. It also alerted Crusoe, who, most likely, listened to the radio chatter as well. The soft sound of waves on the shore and against the side of a small watercraft was the best solution. In their sleep, they heard the waves lapping the shoreline. So, they slept, if you could call it sleeping. Their night was more restless than restful. Nonetheless, their bodies recharged. Hightower was up before dawn's first light, well before the boys. She made instant coffee and stood guard until the sun rose high enough to give enough light to work with. She woke the boys and told them to first find a tree to pee behind, grab breakfast, which consisted of a granola bar, water, and/or coffee. Each boy did as she told them. After relieving themselves and crunching on their breakfast, they observed Quasi sniffing at a tree. They all thought she was just looking for a place to pee. She approached a tree in plain sight, turned her back toward it, and began to kick with her front feet and legs, as if digging a hole. Then she used her back feet and legs, throwing the dirt on the pine tree behind her, like she was trying to bury it. Major Hightower whipped out her pistol and aimed it at Quasi. The boys inhaled so quickly they almost choked. John cleared his head and his throat first. "Don't shoot her!" Major shouted back harsher than ever before. "Shut up, John!" Dave sprung up, ready to tackle her from behind to keep her from shooting their pet. Ronnie called, "Quasi, come here, girl!" Now on to part B. Kideaters vs. Zoo BoyZ, Chapter 13, Part B. The furry-bodied friend was oblivious to the threats of their militant leader. Major Hightower kept her aim on the tree, letting Quasi run over to the boys behind her. Jeremy whispered, "It's a tree monster." Dave looked down at Jer and nodded. He welcomed Quasi to their side, then nodded at his teammate, John. His head sprung up quickly. He was knocked off his feet by the sound of a gunshot. Hightower fired 6 shots into the upper part of the tree, around 7 or 8 feet from the bottom. The bark of the tree splintered, flying through the air in all directions. Then the bark, about a foot or so just below where she fired, shifted. Their minds questioned their eyes. Did you just see what you think you saw? They could almost completely see the outline of a person. They braced themselves when they all clearly heard the voice of a human. "I'm not here. Go away." It was Crusoe. Dave was laying on his side, frozen in the position with which he was knocked down. He was baffled. Major Hightower reloaded her 6-shooter. Ronnie stood up and made a final shot, separating the whole top part of the tree from its lower 7 or 8 feet, sending the upper half crumbling to the ground. Dave yelled, "Surrender!" Jeremy yelled, "Who gave Ronnie a gun?" Ronnie grinned as he answered, "I had it since we rescued you from the Myrtles." The man dropped to his knees. Only then could they fully see how well he was camouflaged. He spoke in fear. Okay, please don't shoot. I mean no harm." Major gave the orders. "Tie him up, boys. We'll put him on the ship with the rest of the other animals." Quasi rewarded the boys with lots of licks and snuggles. Jeremy embraced her and asked his major, "Can we take her on the chopper too?" She nodded while keeping her gun on their new prisoner and confirmed, "We got to, mister." Jeremy and John pulled rope from the backpack. Dave yelled, "Oh, grab 'em and hold 'em. And hand me that cattle prodder too." The three of them ran over to secure him. Ronnie stayed with Quasi. Hightower holstered her sidearm and joined them. Pulled zip ties out from her vest pocket and fastened them around the trespassing creep. With that, they made their way back to the underground passages, leading them back to the empty pool. They let Hightower keep track of their human captive. She didn't mess around. She kept a cattle prodder aimed at him at all times. They came out right at the spot where they were going to catch as many of Tina the tiny tiger's siblings as possible. The high-ranked officer also offered to use this Robinson character as the bait down in the pool. But first, a lot of preparation was needed. They went at it, setting up the trap from scratch. Major instructed them, "First things first. All four of you slide that super big plexiglass box closer to the edge of the pool." It was much lighter than the metal cages and solid wooden crates. Once that was in place, with its front side open, she told them the next step. "Now unroll the large cylinder with the heavy material that's usually used to cover the pool. Push it down into the bottom of the pool. Be sure to keep an opening around the bottom drain. That was where the micro tigers would come in from." Then, while still guarding Ralph, she directed them, "All right, see the rope with the floating beads used to divide the pool between where the shallow and deep end is? Remove the floaty things and fasten one end of the rope to that contraption used to assist in lowering handicapped people into the pool." They took things step by step. She brought things to an end as she set the final stage. Lastly, connect the other end of the rope to the corners of what was the pool cover. This will help us trip or pull the tarp up around everything that comes into the pool. Everything was ready. So, now, she addressed Ronnie. "Okay, kid, it's time to put Tina in. Can I see her before you let her go?" He gave Major Hightower a glimpse. She was truly surprised, not just at Tina's size, but at the fact that Tina looked more like a lion, not a tiger. She reminded herself of notes she read of Hanson's people mixing the DNA of lions with tigers, ligers. None of that mattered now. She decided not to say anything about it. Ronnie knew he had no choice. What brought him comfort was the thought that this one little pet was going to rescue many, as well as be their ticket home. He lifted Tina up close to his face and spoke gently, directly to her, as he slowly entered the pool. "Now, listen, girl. You're gonna be with the rest of your family. We gonna be alright." Then he began to sing the song "Three Little Birds" by Bob Marley and the Wailers. Every little thing gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Each step he took was methodical and considerate. He continued to sing soft and sweet. Rise up in the morning, smile with the rising sun. Three little birds pitch on my doorstep. His voice cracked a little. Swinging sweet songs, a melody pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. He laid her in the bottom of the pool. His friends, Major, and even Ralph, joined him in song. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Yep, the deed was done. He laid her on top of the material right near the drain, then slowly backed up, away from Tina, and out of the tarp. The whole time still singing, almost haunting chorus. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Once left alone, Tina cried. It was hard for them to endure her calls, but it was exactly what was needed to call out the others. Their major handed the cattle prodder to David and gave the order. If he moves even the slightest bit, shock the fire out of him. She made eye contact with Ralph. Dave was hoping he'd have the opportunity to stick it to this guy. Then she went over to the lowering and lifting device. She braced herself while getting ready to crank it with all of her strength. Her combat boots pressed firmly and securely against the lower rod, with her hands grasping the upper levers. They waited. Tina cried. Ron covered his ears. Jeremy put his arm around Ron. John moved around to the other side of the pool and kept his eyes peeled. Dave moved the handheld taser closer to Ralph, Caruso, Willoughby, Robinson. The man leaned back away from the threat. Dave just moved in closer. He wasn't even watching the pool. Tina didn't stop crying, and they waited, and the wait seemed painfully long. On to Part C.